With the market heating up, you're probably feeling a little bit of stress of maybe even a little PTSD going back to 21 with the multiple offer situations. Well, stay tuned, because one of the first subjects we're covering today is how to win in multiple offer situations. Hey, what's happening? I'm J.C Agajanian, broker associate with the Whissel Realty Group at eXp, and as we do every Monday, we are bringing you the recap from the Monday Morning Mastermind put on by the Fast Forward Movement. And today we've got three great topics we're covering for you. First of all, like I mentioned, we are covering multiple offer situations and how to come out victorious. The next one we're going to be looking into is more of a pillar of your business. How are you going to source what we call corporate accounts, or something that's going to be a reoccurring referral source for you in your business? And finally, we're going to give some great advice to someone who just got licensed and is considering getting out of their business and into the real estate business. What next? What are they going to do? Well, let's get straight into it. Winning offers in multiple counter situations. Well, before we do anything, highly important that we make sure you set the expectations right. Straight up front, make sure this buyer knows the situation. They know, hey, this is not fall of 22 when you could kind of call your shots as a buyer. There was a brief window there that was amazing, but those days are over. So the thing that we want to make sure we avoid is getting into a situation, they get their hopes up, they get excited about a property, and then they get crushed. And there's a chance, and this has happened to many people, that they are going to think maybe they selected the wrong agent, instead of knowing, hey, this is the market and this is kind of to be expected, and we knew we might not win our first one, right? So it's a very different response, and it all is dependent on what kind of expectations you set up front. To follow that thought process through, you got to make sure this client is super well educated on the market, what's happening in recent sales of homes that they would have maybe moved on if they were shopping at that point, and then go through the process like, hey, let's look at this one. It came out at this price. It was only on the market for 4 days. They ended up with however many offers. Maybe do some phone calls ahead of time, find out what's going on, and then point to the fact that the property went for X amount over asking. And then pause and be like, look, do you think that was a win or a lose for that buyer? I mean, they got the property, but do you think they overpaid? Well, now with the luxury of having hindsight in our view now, they're likely going to say, yeah, I wish I would have paid that much, even though it seemed like a lot then. So we're helping them get the right perspective as they move forward, that even if they have to pay over asking, we got to think about the future. We're not thinking about the here and now. We're thinking about where this market is going to go next year, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now. And if we help them keep the right perspective in mind, it's going to be a no-brainer, even if they're having to bid up a little bit and take that property down. So yeah, keep their eye on the future, not just on what they need to pay right now. Okay, so now we've got a client with the right perspective. They have the right attitude. They're not going to blame you for losing or anything like that. What do we do when they're actually seeing properties that they want to write on? Well, first and foremost, we are in a contact business, and we need to make contact not just with prospects, but with agents. So we like to call it triangulation in our office. We want to triangulate. Who is this listing agent? Who do they know that I know? Who do I know that can reach out to them and put in a good word for me? We have got to create a relationship where one doesn't exist. This is just the beginning. Of course, we have to be professional. We have to know the right questions to ask. We have to have the right conversations. But this is huge. Ask someone you know that knows them to reach out and vouch for you. Like, very simple, especially with all the different social media sites. Like, there's surely a way you can find them somewhere and see who might be interconnected. If you've got a team lead who's well known in the county, like I do, reach out to him. See if he knows them directly. If not, see who he knows. If he or she knows, if you're not able to find somebody online that you personally have a connection with that can make that introduction. So triangulate, try and establish a relationship, rely on the existing relationship with that other person, and let that rub off on you so that you can be looked on with favor when you're talking to the agent about putting an offer together. Now, when you're talking to them, don't just ask the same dumb questions that every agent, hey, what's your highest offer? What's it going to take? Like, they don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that when I've got listings. Think genuinely. What would make this seller happy? What, in a perfect world, what would this offer look like? and then figure out how you can make your buyer meet that client's needs. Do they need a really quick escrow with no contingencies? Do they need more time because they're going to shop? Is there some rent back needed? What is needed? Is it just price, or are there other terms and conditions that are going to be weighing in on the decision-making process for the seller? Figure that out. And don't just say, where is it at? When are you going to make your decision? What's the deadline? We got to go beyond that. We got to dig, and we got to find out really how we can make our buyer be the perfect puzzle piece for that seller's jigsaw puzzle. So be the easy, friendly agent to work with. Be the knowledgeable one who doesn't bother them but is persistent. Maybe make calls here and there and use text messages to follow up so you're not a nuisance. Figure out how to be that easy, friendly agent to work with who's also professional, and it's going to go a long way. Now, the actual offer itself, what are we going to make different than a boilerplate offer? How are we going to make it different? So obviously, we're going to talk about contingencies, right? You can feel stressed out about removing contingencies that are typically in place, or you can think about it differently. So we prefer to think about it differently. And one way to think about it is that if you have a good process and you've sent a client to your preferred lender, that you have little to nothing to worry about on that front. That lender will tell you if there's concern about them getting across the finish line, because that's someone you rely on and you guys exchange business on a regular basis. So you can trust that person. So first of all, we can go ahead and feel comfortable removing loan approval contingency as long as we've got a solid pre-approval and the lender says, yeah, these people look good to go. What about appraisal? Appraisals have been a little bit contentious recently, but you know what? We can probably release that one as well. You know why? Because as long as we keep that physical home inspection contingency in place, we're going to have the escape hatch. Worst case scenario, we find something that we found out on the physical inspection report that just isn't going to do, and we have to either negotiate the delta, either on the appraisal, but really in credits or something like that, or we just have to exit, unfortunately, but at least we're not stuck. We're not losing earnest money deposit. We're not on the hook. We still have an escape hatch. Now, a good listing agent will see through that, right? And they're going to say, gosh, why do you need a 15, 17-day home inspection contingency period when you've already removed loan and appraisal? And it would be hard to answer that if that's really what you're doing, right? Because you don't need that much time. Just about any home inspector can get out there right away, if not within a few days, at least some cases the next day. I've got an inspector with an amazing team who can sometimes even do same-day bookings. So physically getting an inspector out there to give you the report is not the concern. So what we have to do is go back to the drawing board with this thought process and think, okay, let's talk to that lender again and figure out how quickly. Maybe we need to order a rush on the appraisal. Maybe we need to get the underwriting process going before we actually enter escrow. But how quickly can we feel confident about those first two contingencies, the loan and appraisal, and still have that be a safety net, still have the physical inspection contingency be a safety net so that we can shorten that up. So maybe you've got a 7 or 10 or 12-day physical inspection contingency. But the key is to make sure you've already had the communication with your lender to know that you're going to have that physical inspection contingency cover your loan and appraisal as well. If you make it too short, you could end up getting stuck. So be aware of that. But yeah, it's definitely doing something like that will keep the suspecting listing agent from thinking this is just another trick that this person's doing, because you're keeping all your contingencies tight, not just removing a couple. Another idea, make some of that deposit non-refundable. If you have got a buyer that's in love with the property, pick some amount. You can choose it, but this amount that's going to be released by the buyer to the seller shows commitment, shows intent, shows that you're real about this one. So that goes a long way. If you're willing to release some amount, even if it's only like $5,000 or something, and you brace your buyer, hey, there's a chance you could walk away from this money if something we learned doesn't go well. But it's a good way to get an offer accepted, and potentially even at a price that may be a little less than the absolute highest number, without an agent that's got good communication, without an agent that's tightening up their contingencies or removing some of them or tightening up the timelines. All those things can go a long way, especially this non-refundable portion of your EMD. Now, for FHA, VA buyers, or even conventional 3, 5, 10% down, if you have the ability to go higher, but you just don't want to, because obviously everyone would prefer to keep as much money in the bank as possible and borrow more as long as the payment is comfortable. Show it. Show a huge proof of funds. Show that you're willing and capable. Maybe even write it with a 20% down and then have a change of heart in escrow and say, actually, I want to only do 10 or 5% down. You're not promising to use that same type of financing. You're just showing your intent and your capability, and then you can change that down the road. So show all the strength you can with your buyer in the offer when you're including additional documentation besides the RPA. I always ask my clients to write at least a paragraph or two. We call it a love letter. We tell them just the circumstances. Who are my buyers? Why is this property right for them? What led them up to this point to be making either this move up purchase or this first time buyer situation. The love letters go a long way. And you know what? The next level up on the love letters is a love video. Send a video message to the agent and ask them to share it with their seller. Better yet, do it standing in front of the house. Oh my gosh, we just toured your home. We absolutely love it. We're definitely going to be writing you an offer. Would you please share this message with your seller? We want them to know how serious we are. I'll talk to you soon. Just something brief. It doesn't have to be long, but showing intent and just going out of your way. And on the love letter front, I like to turn it into a PDF and stick it right into that RPA, because a lot of agents will just take that thing right out. And unless they're, a little bit more tech savvy than the average, it may be difficult for them to remove that. So shove that love letter into the RPA and make it part of one file. And then, next thing even better, shoot that video and send it off. It does pay dividends. And I've personally had experiences where my love letter made the difference between my clients getting the accepted offer. They weren't even the highest. They were asked to match the highest, but the sellers had decided, hey, your life happens to coincide with ours 10 years ago. We like where you guys are at. We'd rather see this family in our home because they have sentimental value to their home. And so, hey, can you match this price? Sure, no problem. We got them in there. It's a big deal. This is another thing that kind of goes along the lines of releasing some of the earnest money deposit. And this is for situations where you are in love with the property. Your clients just have to have it. Well, hey, if that's the case, let's put a little bit of money where our mouth is and maybe pay $500 or $700. Get that home inspection done before we even go into contract. This is another huge indicator to your seller that you are serious. You're spending money before it's said and done. And now there's no question marks about the condition of the property. That's always the big looming thing. What is going to happen with a second stage of negotiations? Well, you can take that right off the table, put your buyer's mind at ease that there's nothing, no big scary monsters looming under the foundation or the roof or in the walls of plumbing or electrical. And also on the sell side, helps them understand, hey, buyers already learned all they need to know about this property and they're still writing anyways. So that's a great way to do it as well. Just pay for a pre-list inspection. Most sellers are happy to have that done. Now, a little bit of logistics. A lot of times, especially with hot properties, we're going to see something like, hey, offers are due by Tuesday at 5 p.m. So maybe you see the property on a Friday or Saturday, there's a deadline. Well, you know what? There's nothing saying you have to wait for that deadline to come. There's different ways you can play this. Some people prefer to wait till the end, try and pepper the agent for as much information as they can, get what they can, and then squeeze it in right before it's said and done. That's one way to do it. Sometimes it works. Another way to do it, come early and come strong. Do all you can. This goes not only with a strong offer and a great package to go with it, the supporting documentation, but fantastic communication. Do all you can to make something so great that they just don't even want to deal with it anymore. Maybe they'll even cancel one or both of the open houses and just say, we love this one. We can't find anything wrong with this number or the rest of the terms and conditions. We're going to go ahead and move forward with this one. That happens and that wins. And I've seen it before where I've seen deadlines and an offer gets accepted before we even get to it. And the rest of us are standing there with our hands in the air going, what the heck? You told us there was a deadline. And all they have to say is, I'm sorry, the seller liked this one and decided to move forward with it. There's nothing we can do about it. So don't get caught with your hands in the air. Consider being that strong buyer in the first place. Another thing to kind of coach your clients through is to not only focus on the hot new listings. Now, clearly, as agents adding value, we should not just be setting people up on MLS searches and saying, let me know what you like. Anyways, we should be looking at off-market properties, expired properties. We should be talking to investors that we know that might have flips coming up. We should be talking to other agents that we know that might have coming soon. So of course, we should be doing all those things. But in addition to that, your buyer is likely just waiting for the fresh, new, hot ones to come up every Wednesday or Thursday or Friday when they get listed, right? Well, let's reframe their mentality on that as well and say, listen, let's take a look at these properties that are maybe a little bit out of price range, but have been sitting for a long time, or maybe they're within price range and we can get a better deal on it. If the property is going to be right for that person, but the market has decided there's something wrong with it, and now activity is slowing after whatever the case may be, a few weeks or even a month or two, that thing could be ripe for a nice deal. And those deals are always a lot less stressful than the competition situations that we're talking about today. So help your clients to remember, we're not just focusing on the brand new ones, and go in there and point out, hey, this one kind of sounds like what you're talking about. What do you think about this property? You might find a nice, easy one to put together. The seller may be finally softened up enough to not be unrealistic, because clearly that's why the property hasn't sold yet, is because the seller is unrealistic with price. All you need to do is figure out that timing, find the one who's ready to finally soften up, make a deal. Another great tip on winning in this situation lies in the losing. What do I mean by that? Stay sticky to these agents that maybe you didn't get selected with. Maybe you lost out on a multiple offer situation, but you know what? Fallout is real. And over the past year or two, because of the activity and how fast everything's going, I feel like fallout has been higher than normal. In our office, we've got multiple examples of people winning in second or third place position. It happens all the time. So if you've got a property that absolutely broke your client's heart when they didn't get it, stay sticky, stay up to date. Make sure you find out when those contingencies are due. Follow up before, then follow up right on, and follow up right after those contingencies are due. Find out if there's any question of this thing falling apart or if it is sailing smoothly. You need to know the situation for that property that they love so much, because there is a decent chance, and it could be as high as 10 to 25, 30% chance that that property will fall out, depending on your market. And when it does, you're the one who's been the squeaky wheel. You're the one who's been following up. You're the one that makes sure that seller knows your client is not going to fall out. They love this place, and they're going to do what it takes to get across the finish line. So stay sticky with the agent that you lost out on. Finally, before we wrap this subject up, we'll talk about the cash offer programs. If you don't have access to one, feel free to reach out. I'll clue you in on the one that we use most of the time. But there are companies out there that will take your finance buyer, let them use their cash, and turn them into cash buyers. It's a great program, and it's a really good way to separate yourself out from a crowd in a multiple offer situation. So that's what we got for that one. Now, let's move on to these corporate accounts or reoccurring referral sources that we've talked about. I was fortunate enough to have one of these back in the heyday. I got signed up with some REO accounts, and I had a stream of foreclosure properties coming into my inbox damn near weekly at the peak. And it was amazing. So that was one thing that is going to be difficult to replicate. But if we focus on the 6 Ds of life-changing events, if you haven't heard of them, we've got death, we've got divorce, we've got debt, we've got disease, we've got diapers, we've got diamonds. These are all things that lead to change. You could figure it out by the name of each one: death, divorce, disease, debt, diapers, diamonds, right? You know what's going on in people's lives when you say those words. So let's go back a step. What leads to any of these things, or who are the people that are contacted first before the real estate agent when you're talking about these things? Topic of conversation quickly moved to probate attorneys. That's one of the most common reoccurring, referral sources that realtors have. The first thing is, it's difficult to make contacts with these people, but assuming you've maybe worked with one just by chance, whether you're working with them on the list side or opposite them on the buy side, do what you can to make a great relationship with that person, make a relationship that lasts, and make an impact with that person. And then do what you can to meet more people like that person, right? And so once you have one or a whole list of people in this category, let's treat them like they're past clients. We're going to send them market updates. We're going to keep them updated on the real estate market, because we know, in this case, they're attorneys. They're not focusing on real estate like we are every single day. So keep them updated. do pop-bys, do value adds, and just help educate them so that they can help educate their clients. And then you're the knowledge broker. You're the source of this information when the time comes. Find out just like in real estate or any other field, there's usually going to be, one or two or five, a handful, something like that, of top people that are going to be the number one bankruptcy attorney, the number one probate attorney, the number one trust attorney, the number one family law attorney. That's the divorce one. Even some random fields that you wouldn't expect it, like physicians will have, financial literacy classes, or people in a tech office where they're making, whether it's computer tech or pharma or whatever it is, there's other places where people are educating them on not just real estate, but financial literacy in general. So what can we do? We've got to have a great catalog of educational videos that we can offer these people to use. And then maybe even parlay that into running a course if you can. Being in person, meeting people, teaching them about the process of buying and investing in real estate. It's an amazing idea, right? Easier said than done, but that's where the sales hat comes out, and you got to go pound the pavement and meet these people. If you don't know anybody, just like any other networking opportunity, reach out. See if you've got a family or a friend or some other relational connection to these influencers, and figure out how you can just get in the door, just get an introduction. Because cold calling people like this that are professionals, they're probably getting hammered every day by people. They're not going to typically take too kindly. So that's why I mentioned taking advantage of maybe a transaction that you were in at one point, and or trying to network and see who you know. That just like with the agent with the popular property, you've got an attorney or some other type of referral lead source. Triangulate, try and find who knows that person, and see if there's a way you can find somebody to make an introduction, to open the door for you. And you'll find that warm intro is going to go a million miles farther than all the pounding of the pavement and the calling and the hard work that it will take otherwise. Finally, you can get some certificates and various credentials that will help you in your efforts if you're going to do this. You can get a probate certificate or a designation. You can get a divorce one. But here's the overarching message in all of this. These are great ideas, and there's lots of people out there that are in a position to regularly refer business to someone like you and I. But we have got to be absolutely committed to going after a source like this. Making a few calls, even getting to the point where you've had a meeting or two is not going to do it. It has to be persistent. It has to be part of something you do every single week. You have to be determined and committed to make these sources your referral sources. It's a lot of hard work, but boy, does it pay off if you're able to make those good connections, especially if you get to do that with more than one of them. Now, we're going to finalize our talk this morning with advice for a new licensee, someone who, in this case, was a computer engineer, software engineer, developer, went through his first purchase recently and said, gosh, this is a lot more interesting than what I do every day. I would like to get into this business. So what do we tell somebody like that, right? Well, first of all, you got to form a structure. You got to find out how much time is really available to dedicate to something above and beyond your regular work. And then you've got to write down your priorities, learning, education, coaching, of course, prospecting, and then just focus on those income producing activities. And you've got to build them into your schedule in addition to your full-time job schedule, right? It's a lot, but this is an endeavor that, is going to pay off with freedom, with probably higher pay, and with a lot more, diversification in your daily work life. So yeah, it's worth it. Now, you gotta, like even if you're not new and transitioning, it's hugely important to nail down that morning schedule. Include something for yourself, whether you got some prayer time, meditation, you got some devotion, some exercise. Build something out that is good for you early in the morning. Make it a powerful morning, and then carry that on to building in practice. You got to learn your scripts. You've got to role play. You've got to do it every day. Honestly, if you really want to break into it and leave the day job behind, you're going to have to build in 3 hours of lead generation a day, minimum. You're going to have to add an additional hour of follow-up calls and follow-up work every day. You're going to have to work into the night. Work till 9 p.m. if you have to. Do what you can to make this transition. Now, You've got to focus on practical knowledge, of course, because up until now, this new licensee, you're working on book knowledge, right? So you're learning the things that you have to learn to be able to take the real estate salesperson's exam. Well, that's over. We're focused on practical knowledge now. We need to know what is going on in the market, and we need to have our market to message agreement be right on the money. It needs to be spot on. We need to be communicating with now buyers and sellers what's going on. So that means we have to be educated and we have to know what's going on. In my mind, that means be a part of a team where there's constantly new information and conversation going on about the market. Like I said before, practice. You've got to be able to have the scripts down, to have a solid conversation. You got to be able to book appointments, and then you've got to be able to perform a solid buyer consultation to explain the process and demonstrate your unique selling proposition to a buyer. Like, these are all the very fundamentals, the very basics that you've got to have down if you want to be able to transact in this business. Going back to the original conversation, breaking out of one job and moving into another, let's determine these intentions. We got to be serious and honest with ourselves. Are you really seeking to get out of that old job and move into full-time as a realtor, or is this going to be a part-time gig? Don't bullshit yourself about this. Like, what are you going to do? Because it's going to determine what sort of activities you set out and how well you stick to them, right? So be honest with yourself. Be real about your time as well. Are you really able to keep your employer happy and make sure that your work requirements are satisfied with 20, 25, 30 hours? Or are you regularly spending 40, 50, 60 hours with your day job and you're barely going to have any time at all left to start this new venture? Like, be real about your time and figure out how much time you're going to be able to dedicate, not just on a week or a monthly basis, but every single day. And then go back to what I said in the beginning, build out your calendar accordingly. In the end, if you are not absolutely committed to going full-time and, just logging a lot of conversations every day, it's never going to happen. It won't happen by accident for you, right? There's a great book you can check out called Burn the Boats. And this is going to help you get a right mental outlook on this conversation that we're having about determination and making this change. And if you don't agree with this book, don't even do this. If you do, go all in and go hard and go for it, and you're going to be happy you did. Like I said before, this is bringing up ideas about a team. Even after I was an REO broker, independent with my own shingle storefront up front, I decided to join the biggest team in town because there was a lot that team brought to the table that I did not have currently, and it was going to take a lot of work, a lot of time and effort and energy to build that in my own company. So I said, you know what? I'm going to let go of my independence and I'm going to join this other team. Seriously, consider joining a team. If you are new, I feel like you've just got to. And interview teams. Find the best one in your market. There's always so much more support, so much more structure. The training, everything is going to be better on a team. Your learning curve will definitely be shortened as well. I mean, I just see what new agents are doing in my office compared to the path that I took, and it is a stark contrast. It makes me wish I had an opportunity like this damn near 20 years ago. So it's really big because the runway to success in the real estate business, it's a long one, and you've got to be able to get up to speed and at least turn that first, second, third transaction as soon as possible. Because if you don't, you're going to burn out and you're never going to get off the ground in this industry. It's cutthroat and it's a sales job. Don't forget that. You have to pick up the phone, and you have to talk to people, you have to make appointments, you have to convince them that not only do you know what you're talking about, but you're a great option to help them through the process. Okay? So don't forget about that runway. The way to shorten it is to go with a high-producing, powerful team in your area. Along the lines of that thinking is the old adage, don't be a secret agent. And what we mean by this is don't think that by mentioning it, what you're doing to a few of your friends or to even the coworkers you can trust and not say anything to the boss, that you've gotten the word out. I mean, you really have to scream it from the rooftop. You've got to hit the ground running, get the word out to everyone you know. And this doesn't mean just put out a social post or two here and there, but get on the phone, call everyone you know. Text people you know, leave emails, for everyone you know. Create a database. The first database you're going to have is everybody in your phone that lives in your county, and let them know what you're doing. You are making a transition. You've joined one of the best teams in town, or whatever the case may be, and you're ready to help. Who do you know that needs to find somebody who's looking to make a move or something like that, right? Don't be a secret agent. Make sure everybody knows you're an agent and you're here to do business. Finally, be wary of all the distractions that are going to come your way. You've got to main focus on having conversations with people about real estate every day. You've got to maintain focus on booking appointments from those conversations, and you've got to maintain your focus on taking those appointments and moving them forward into transactions. There's a million different things people will talk about in a real estate office: social media, making videos, working on their logos. What kind of brand do I want to have? These are distractions when you're a new agent. Don't think about any of it. Just focus on conversations, focus on appointments, focus on transactions. There will be plenty of time to worry about the other stuff. But like I said, if we don't keep that as our core focus from the beginning, that runway will run out and we won't have any paychecks to show for it. And we'll end up never getting rid of that full-time job when it's said and done. So that's all I got for you today. I hope you found the recap from today's Monday morning mastermind helpful. And as usual, feel free to reach out with any questions, comments, or discussion about any of the things we've discussed today. And more importantly than anything, take something that you like and actually take action on it. Implement it into your business instead of just putting it in there for head knowledge. I'll talk to you soon.